Hi, my name is Jenny Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today joining us we have District Judge Chris Carnahan joining us. He is there in Faulkner and Van Buren counties. He is facing the Arkansas Supreme Court Justice Robin Lynn in the November 8th general runoff election. Hello.
Hello, how are you, Jenny?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining Conduit. It's been a while since we last had you on here.
I think in late April or early May was the last time
That's
I was on.
right. Yeah, I believe it was right before the May elections. Well, listen, early voting is soon to start. November 8th will be here very soon. Give us a quick update on how your campaign is going.
But it's going good. It's very different from my previous race as a district judge here in Faulkner and Van Buren counties, and really even when I used to be a political operative, I used to work for the Republican Party as their executive director years ago. It's much different when you're the candidate as opposed to being an operative. It's much different running a 75 county race as opposed to a 2 county race. And so, very busy. I am humbled by the support people have given me. We got a load of the larger yards, yard signs or highway signs in, about 700 of them, and in a week they're gone. So that there's some enthusiasm and excitement. I know everywhere I go, people want to see a court that does its business. And that's one of the key things that I've run on is for our Supreme Court to do its business, stay in its lane, not get involved in political fights. And by political fights, I mean public policy choices. We elect to do that. And I think our representatives and senators, they can do a fine job. And if we don't like it, we have the initiative in referenda, and we certainly have the power to not vote them back in again if we don't like the direction they're taking our state. So I want our republic to work, and I'm committed to making sure that the Supreme Court, at least as far as my one decision-making capability on the court, makes it do that.
Talk to us about what you're hearing as you travel around the state and you're talking to constituents. What are they saying specifically? What are the top issues that they believe are most important? And then also, do they talk to you about the direction of the court, how they want to see, they don't want to see justices and judges legislate from the bench anymore? What are you hearing specifically from people?
The number one thing I hear, and it may be because of my job, is it's law and order issues. The lack of accountability we've got currently on both our federal and state level. Those issues are hitting home. People, drugs have so warped our criminal justice system because they warp minds. They destroy lives.
Yeah.
And there's not a family that I know of who hasn't been somehow touched. It doesn't no matter how much money you make or how little you make. Either people are stealing from their family members or they're stealing from other people to support habits once they run out of their money. Violent crime goes along with extended long-term narcotic use. And so that's ramping up the number of people that we have to protect society from, and we just don't have prison space for it. I do think people still want folks to have an opportunity for a second chance. Unfortunately, it seems to me that most of the second chances that I know that are successful wound up with an incarceration in a prison because they were more isolated from the ability to get a hold of drugs and stuff. They had to focus on just to make it through the day, go to their classes, do things, and try to overcome their addiction problems. Extended stay rehabs are something we have to have, and right now we've got in 60-day wonders, and those are too short. So people are worried about crime, they're worried about narcotics, and I've got a good record and reputation that I make sure that if someone is proven beyond a reasonable doubt for violating something, they get an appropriate sanction. Can be anything from a fine all the way up to jail. And certainly when I was circuit judge, prison sentences. I don't shrink from putting in people in to incarcerate them because jail is punishment. It's meant to be that. It's meant to also the community while you're away. So I think I've got to get law enforcement. They get a fair trial just like a defendant gets a fair trial at my courtroom. I've been a prosecutor and I've seen instances where law enforcement didn't get a chance to have their say. And I'm certainly not a judge that does that.
Talk to us, you've touched on this just a little bit, but talk to us more about your judicial philosophy, where you stand, and then contrast that, if you would, to your opponent, Justice Wynne.
Well, my judicial philosophy, at least if you looked at a federal or state constitutional level, it would be what I've practiced as a circuit and district judge, and that is I'm a textualist, and I believe in the original meaning of words. I don't try to look for outcomes. So I let the text of the law or the Constitution dictate what the outcome is, given a set of facts. There are certainly activist judges who try to look at an outcome and try to kind of shoehorn in the meaning of a word or put
Right.
it different than what was in use at the time that the law was written, or is just contrary to the plain meaning of the statute. I think that's why when our newest federal Supreme Court justice was in her nomination proceedings, people were stunned that she couldn't tell you what a woman is. That type of thinking that I think is so out of bounds, not only with the law, but with the way most Arkansans live their lives.
Yes.
Words have meanings, actions have meanings and consequences. And so using a textualist approach, in my mind, is the best way to do that. There are many other approaches that you could use. You could try to make every case about an environmental case. There's a small branch of jurisprudence that tries to look at everything through an environmental impact. There are others that want to look at it through a solely religious impact. I think currently the majority leftist view in this country, and certainly on the current Arkansas Supreme Court and with my opponent, is there's the law, but I want to go out and I want to do what I think needs to be done to mold society. Judges shouldn't, our legislators and our people should mold society.
Yes, that is so true. I think that Democrats, and they tend to want those types of activist judges to reinterpret the Constitution to fit their agenda. You mentioned your opponent. This is a nonpartisan race, and we know that. But if people were to compare your records, I think there is that stark contrast that people can view. And of course, we have written about this before on Conduit, and I'll reference that article. But in the article, we point out, because he did not respond to the Family Council survey. You did that. We will link that as well. But we provide information to help our viewers understand his philosophy. And just a few key points: former Democrat state's representative, supported by Democrat donors, donated to Democrat candidates. And there's 10 points, but one thing that is significant that I'm not sure many people are aware of, but as a prosecutor, he intentionally destroyed evidence in a court case, and that is according to a federal judge panel. Give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that case is the Jimerson and Brown case. Those two gentlemen are now free after serving 20 years each on a horrible sexual violation and murder of an 81-year-old woman in Dallas County back in I believe it was 88. Justice Wynne was then deputy prosecutor Wynne, and police and he used an informant to try to elicit jailhouse confessions, and then they destroyed the recording. The Eighth Circuit Appeals found that he had acted in bad faith, and that he told the public defender they had never used any type of jailhouse confession, nor was there any evidence or any tape made of anything like that. And they furthermore went on and said that Justice Wynne is untruthful. And when the people of Arkansas voted for Justice Wynne the first time in 2014, none of this came to light. It's the result of federal habeas corpus action that occurred in 2015 and ultimately led to the release of Jimerson and Brown. There's a third person who's still serving time, who is the person who had some mental retardation issues, I think is how the court termed it. And he's still serving part of his sentence based on a federal court technicality. And that kind of leads to this other thing. There's a way for him to still get out if the state parole board would do their job. They turn thousands of violent people out every day. But here's the other troubling thing. Why hasn't Justice Wynne went to the parole board and said, I made a horrible mistake. He needs to be let out. That is
Right.
something.
Yeah, that is definitely significant. A few other things that I'd like for you to comment on. He voted against returning to jury trials during COVID. He voted to overturn the legislature and the death penalty. It just seems as though his positions continue to line up more so with the radical left.
Well, yeah, it's hard for me to criticize other judges about what they did during COVID, but I will tell you what, except for I think April of 2020 when the first big expansion was, and it was it's the end of the world, it's worse than the Spanish flu. We shut down for a month, but my
Yeah.
courtroom was open throughout the rest of the pandemic, which is why we don't have a backlog. You know, I hear cases about judges that we've got backlogs here and backlogs there. It's because they weren't able to process through and work their cases. I think that was a mistake on the Supreme Court's part. We got very little guidance generally from the Supreme Court other than follow the rules laid out by health officials. And as we know, health officials made up contradictory rules. They didn't follow their own rules. We weren't ever sure firm day-to-day basis what the rules were, or recommendations, I should say, that we should follow. So on that, I think there is a failure by the Supreme Court. We should have got things moving a whole lot quicker as a judiciary. But on the death, that's the Torres case, and I think it's set to go back for its 5th or 6th retry up in Benton County. Now it's been rescheduled for next January or February, and it was a case of judicial innovation. Mr. Torres accused of brutally sodomizing his son, and after this wounds that were sustained through that led to sepsis, he let the child die and tried for capital murder. Some of the events happened in Missouri, some of the events happened in Arkansas. And the Arkansas Supreme Court, unlike even the liberal states of Massachusetts and Michigan, got out there and said, well, there's got to be a bigger, stronger nexus between the injury and the ignoring of your child's health needs before you can try someone for capital murder. So that's an innovation that I'm not aware of any other state has.
Well, before we let you go, is there anything that you would like to add? A campaign video ad recently came out for you, and it was really well done. It looks great. I liked how they tied in a little bit of Razorback football since we're in that season to say, you know, voting for you is an easy call. Just talk to us very briefly about that.
Well, of course, that's not something I put together.
No, it's not. No.
Good ad, at least from my perspective, and it's from what I saw in it, it's an accurate ad.
Yeah.
And of course, those on the left, especially those down here in Little Rock, they recoil at accuracy in ads and want to talk about it. But I think it's a good one. I know my campaign, I think we're going to start actually having our ads seen next week. They cost money, and I can't directly solicit contributions. But if you want to send my campaign anything, whether it's a good idea, a bad idea or not, Post Office Box 1411, Conway, Arkansas, 72033.
Well, thank you so much, Judge. Good luck on November 8th, and thank you for joining us on Conduit.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day, and please vote before November the 8th.